Hello, hello. It is Tuesday, August 19th, and it is the first day of school today. So this is kind of my first day of freedom. Hopefully the audio on this isn't too terrible. I'm at the Waterwise Garden. This is actually a little free library right behind me. Today we are also getting our roof redone. The supplies are there. They dropped off the big, what do you get to put trash, like a big metal bin that's on a trailer that you put trash in. There's a term for that, and I cannot think of it. A big trash bin. I don't know. Anyway, the materials are on the roof, and there's the big trash bin. Dumpster. That's the word I'm looking for. The materials are on the roof, and there is a dumpster there at our house, and they're going to be coming today and redoing the roof. This is very exciting. We're also still under a heat advisory, or a different heat advisory, I should say. It's climate change. We're always under a heat advisory in July and August now, apparently. So, two things that we're going to be focusing on in this video. Number one, I'm starting revisions. I finished the draft in mid-June, so it's had a couple months to rest, and I think it's time for me to start reading through it and making notes and planning my revisions. And number two, this week there is an online speculative fiction writers conference summit thing. It is totally free, though you can get an upgrade package where you have access to the classes for longer. But for the next 3 days, there will be classes all day long, including the very first one tomorrow is by Lisa Crone, the author of Story Genius and Wired for Story. So I'm super excited about that. There's a whole bunch of stuff like that. I'm really excited about it. This is a free conference that I learned about through my speculative fiction group here in Springfield. And then Saturday is the final day of the summit, and there's going to be a Q&A. Then I have my Writers Guild meetings. So I have my regular appointment at 11, and in the meantime, I'm going to be working on revisions. Buggies are loud. Today is day 2 of my roof, so that's what that sound is. I'm doing the WorldShift Speculative Fiction Writers Summit today. I just listened to the opening talk, which was by Lisa Cron. Most of what she talked about was stuff that was in Wired for Story, but it was a really good talk. The next talk is called Seduce the Reader, 3 Chapter 1 Strategies to Hook Readers and Agents. And that should be starting here in the next couple minutes. I definitely did not want to get up this early, and I'm super tired, but that's how this goes. There are at least 4 more different talks going on today that I want to watch, so that's going to be a lot. I also wanted to record a video today, but with the roof stuff, that's just not realistic. This is a vlog, so that's fine. And a lot of what I'm recording today will be B-roll, not really me actually talking to the camera. Sorry about the background noise. Hopefully it's not picking up too much, but it is very apparent. Well, this next class is starting, so I'm gonna get into that. I just finished the video on first chapters and strategies for that. It was really interesting. The first video was very cool and I really enjoyed it, but it was more like a summary or going over stuff I already knew. This one about first chapters, about making your first chapters appeal to readers and to agents. It was fascinating. She spoke a lot about interiority and deep POV and backstory, and using all of that to enhance your story. It was really cool. The next one that I'm going to is called Goal Setting for Writers. I'm immediately hesitant of anything that's about like goal setting or productivity because all of it is designed for people who don't have huge executive function issues, people who don't struggle to build habits or follow routines. So I'm not sure how helpful any of this will be, if it will be designed in a way that actually works for me, but we'll see. That was an interesting exercise. I don't really know how helpful it will be. It was a lot of like manifestation talk, like setting this really big goal that isn't super likely to be achieved and certainly not anytime soon, like being a 6-figure author, bigger stuff like that, that requires not just you to do something, but other people play a role in it as well. It kind of implemented that and then like using that as your basis and planning your SMART goals around that. It's interesting and probably helpful to a lot of people. Probably not super helpful to me, but the next talk that's going to be starting soon is called The Evolution of a Writer, Finding Your Motivation Every Day. I'm not really sure if I'm going to go to that one. There's The Hero's Journey to Author Success. That kind of makes me roll my eyes a little bit. What they're not saying, stronger scenes through nonverbal cues, scene essentials, bring your world to life, raise your voice. I think the next one I was really interested in is starting around noon, so that gives me a couple hours. It's just before 10 right now. And honestly, I'm really tired. I did not want to get up this early. I might take a nap. But at 4:15 today, there's one that's writing while neurodiverse. That's probably the one I'm most interested in throughout the entire summit. So, anyway, I'm maybe gonna crash for a couple hours now. Hello. I'd say good morning, but it is afternoon. Today is Thursday, and it's time to do more of the WorldShift Speculative Fiction Writers Summit. Yesterday was the first day. Before I really dive into any of that, I want to go over a few things. First of all, I got a package yesterday that I need to open. These are two books that I specifically bought for Asa Merritt and Sarah Ray Warner's book club. So this is the one that's about horror, and this is the sci-fi one. These things are enormous. This is as big as my head. I'm talking volume-wise. I've not been able to attend any of the book club lives yet, but we're working on it. There was one today. It might still be ongoing, I don't know, but I was up late last night, and so I slept in for the first time in, probably since summer vacation started. Sleeping in isn't really a thing when you have children that get up at 7 a.m. every single day. My husband took the kids to school, and I slept till like 10:30. And the only reason I could do this is because yesterday during this writer's summit, I discovered that all of these are pre-recorded. This is a free summit, or you can pay for the all-access pass that I believe works until the next summit next year. If you do the free version though, you only have 24 hours to watch stuff. But because these are all pre-recorded, that means the only thing I miss out on if I don't do it when it's first available is the live chat, which is pretty hit or miss of how helpful any of that is going to be, or even how nice people are going to be. Yesterday, very first video, their opening talk, and there's some dude bro in there calling Lisa Cron a feminazi who hates men. And I'm just like, we don't necessarily need the live chat. So I knew that I could sleep in and not really miss anything as long as I watch stuff within the 24-hour period. So ones that I'm going to watch today. Yesterday evening there was one by Gabriela Pereira, who's the founder of DIY MFA, about character archetypes, so I want to watch that one. This morning was a talk by K.M. Weiland, who I love her books, about weaving plot, character, and theme for powerful storytelling. This one sounds interesting. Narrative distance for cutting-edge fantasy. This one I definitely want to watch. This one was a couple hours ago. How to use short stories to write better novels. That's awesome. Stuff about writing compelling, inciting incident. Oh, this one I want to watch. This one's live right now. Adding emotionally resonant romance to your speculative fiction. I don't write romance, but I love romantic subplots, so that's kind of exactly the kind of thing I'm looking for. This one sounds cool too. Write it ugly, dismantling perfectionism to finish the damn book. That sounds fun. This one is particularly relevant. It's nuts out there, holding space for creativity and inspiration in the chaos. That is a daily struggle. Ooh, this one I'm really interested in. Human-centered marketing for authors. That sounds great. Stuff about trad versus self-pub, and then this one that starts at 5:55 p.m. tonight. 3 marketing tools you need now because a publisher won't do it for you. I'm definitely interested in that too. That would be something I watch tomorrow though. And that's the last one for the day. And then there's still all this stuff tomorrow. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 talks that I want to watch today or early tomorrow before they disappear. And then that doesn't even go into all of the ones tomorrow. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff and I'll get into that in a few minutes. Other updates, I have a new SSD to replace my current one, so I just have to figure out how to do that. These are from all the classes I did yesterday. Took a bunch of notes, filled up this notebook finally. I started this one in March, so that's pretty fast. The last talk that I watched yesterday was about writing while neurodiverse, which was interesting interesting, aside from the focus was on ADHD, which, like, I get, but I also feel like ADHD gets a lot of focus. I don't know, that's probably just my perspective. There's a lot of overlap between ADHD and autism and other neurodivergent conditions. I hate that term, that's a bad term. A bunch of the stuff was helpful and talked about some of the issues that I have specifically, stuff that I struggle with. My main struggle is motivation, and I have a term for what this is now: writing avoidance. When your story is good and you enjoy it, you like are excited about it, but you can't focus on it due to a lack of motivation. But like all of the suggestions on how to help were stuff like set up a writing routine or switch up the way you're writing. If the issues are you don't have enough stamina, then do sprints and break them up. Like do 15-minute sprints. If you can't write for an hour, you can at least write for 15 minutes, right? And focusing on like small, achievable goals so you're not getting overwhelmed. This was interesting though. She suggested rewarding yourself for starting writing, not for completing a goal. I'm curious if that is something that would be helpful for me, because the way dopamine works, like I bought these books, I got super excited about getting them. That dopamine hit happened when I purchased them. And then like there's another dopamine hit when you open it, but it's, as far as I can understand, smaller than the hit when you purchase it in the first place. So if you want to encourage the act of writing and build motivation for writing in general, doing rewards at the beginning as opposed to at the end makes a lot of sense. And then she also talked about body doubling and like having outside accountability and stuff like that. Most of that wasn't new ideas or anything like that, and they are very much geared toward ADHD, which I may or may not have. I feel like a lot of my like not being able to focus on things has more to do with anxiety than ADHD, but I certainly relate to a lot of factors. But like there's so much focus on building the habit, which is something that I specifically struggle with. If you know about autism, then you know that forming those habits and keeping the habits is incredibly difficult. Basically, for people with autism and probably for other neurodivergent people, there's a lot of overlap. It is incredibly difficult to maintain a habit, even if you create a habit. For neurotypical people, when you form a habit, you keep doing it often enough, it becomes ingrained, and you stop having to think about it. That's not how my brain works. No matter how many times I do something, if it gets messed up one time, if there's some kind of break in the routine, then it all falls apart. Like, forcing myself to take care of my body is a daily struggle. I did find this really interesting though. In the section about focus, she talked about planning ahead for distractions. One thing specifically was using a notebook for noting your internal thoughts so that they're out of your brain and not able to distract you. That's honestly how I can see something like morning pages being beneficial to me, is that I can just get out all of these thoughts that are overwhelming and distracting, and they are in there. Like, this is why journaling can be really helpful. My problem is maintaining that habit of journaling or whatever. I like the idea of morning pages a lot the more I learn about it, because the idea is that you throw it away. You don't look at it. It is not meant to be for anyone, even your future self. And the idea of writing in a journal is basically like, this is a keepsake. This is for your future, which is kind of silly because it shouldn't be for your future. It should be for your present, but it's hard not to think of it like that. There was a lot of good information in the neurodivergent talk. I just wish it wasn't solely focused on ADHD, but obviously that's what the person who did the talk has experience with, so of course that's what she's going to talk about. It would be really nice to have more people talk about writing with autism and stuff like that. That isn't really talked about. But she has a book coming out like in a month or two, it's sometime this year, about writing for people with ADHD. that's really cool, and I will probably have to get a copy. I don't know how helpful it will be, but I think it's awesome. Oh, the other thing, I cracked my phone, so that's cool. It's not actually the phone though, it's a screen protector, so I need to replace that. I have that stuff. So now that we've gone over everything, I'm ready to dive into more of these talks and take a bunch of notes. It is 4 o'clock, so I don't have a whole lot of time. I watched 4 of the different talks. One of them I didn't really find helpful, so I did not include any stuff. I think the first one that I watched, which was the last one of yesterday, the character archetypes by Gabriela Pereira, that one was so helpful. Like, I know a lot of stuff about character archetypes and, like, different character types. I feel like there's normally 12. This was a really simplified version with only 4 character archetypes, and basically it's how relatable versus aspirational your character is, and how much they change versus try to preserve things. Why it was so interesting is because it brought to light one of the issues that I've been having with this 4th book. For the first 3 books, but especially the first 2, Billy's character was the survivor. Basically, she is stuck in a bad situation and she's just trying to make it through. But where she's at now, she isn't just trying to survive. She is doing well. She's more than surviving. And her goal is to keep doing well. And, like, in some ways to improve her relationship with her sister especially. And because her sister is younger, she's trying to look out for her. So instead of being a survivor archetype, in this book, she's a protector archetype. And I guess one of my biggest struggles with this draft and with this story in general is not knowing what the best way to write her character arc is. But basically, Billy is trying to help take care of her sister, trying to give her the support that she needs because she's having a hard time right now. And her sister is pushing her away because she doesn't want to be helped, which is the same thing that Billy did in the beginning. It's really weird to be writing Billy in the same type of story, but the position she's in is different than it was before. She's still pretty relatable as opposed to aspirational. So I don't know. I think the biggest struggle I'm having with this book is not really knowing what her character arc is or having a definitive character arc. All of the characters that have bigger character arcs are not the main character. And Billy is mostly in a good place. There are plot elements that cause her to struggle. So I don't know. I need to explore this more. But that was really helpful. The other ones I looked at were about how plot, character, and theme are all working together. Plot plus character equals theme. If you're trying to insert your theme into your story, you're not doing it right. It should come naturally. It is the natural progression of what happens when character and plot are working together properly. So, like, basically this here, if you're stuck on plot, then work on character stuff. And if you're stuck on character, then work on theme. And it just becomes this circle of you work on one section as best as you can, and then when you get stuck, you work on a different part, and it all works together. The next one was about narrative distance, which is basically like a really intense way to look at your POV. So often we boil it down to first person is the closest first, and then deep third, and then close third, and then like omniscient, and like, but it's not that simple, and there are a lot of ways that you can really dive into this and change the way the readers see the connection based on just word choices. And it basically put into words a lot of things that I already know. Just thinking about how formal your word choices are, like, are you using contractions, or are you using informal colloquial words and phrases in your narration? How sensory is it? How fragmented? How often are you putting like time markers in, and what kind of time markers are you using? Something that focuses on today, now, here, this location and time is much closer than a long time ago. And how close is the narrator to the main character? Because that's a whole other thing. That was really fascinating. And then the last one that I did was about romance in speculative fiction, and I don't know, I didn't really get anything out of it. I didn't take any notes on it. One thing I did though, I replaced the screen protector on my phone, so it's no longer shattered. So I will probably fit in more of these talks this evening, but I have a school function that I have to go to, so check in later. It is Friday afternoon. I had a pretty nice morning. I did some classes and then took a break, went for a walk, made some food, and then got back to doing this. I got a little bit interrupted because my sister stopped by, and then I came back down to finish There are still like 5 more talks for the rest of the day that I have not gotten to. Some of them aren't available yet, but I need to try to fit those in tonight if I want to, because I won't have time tomorrow because tomorrow is Writers Guild. The ones I've watched today have been about human-centered marketing, more marketing stuff. Then I did one that was about fantasy world building. There was one about building a writing habit that sticks. There were some interesting things in there, some stuff that I think will definitely be helpful if I implement it. Her starting point was focusing on auditing how you do things now and making adjustments. And that's something I haven't really done. Building habits is difficult, I've talked about that some, but if you really break stuff down to the source, I'm interested to explore that and just kind of see where it goes. I don't know how helpful any of that will be. And then this last one that I just did was one called Revision Made Easy, which is just like, that's where I'm at. I literally started revising a couple days ago. So there's some stuff in here that could be really useful. She talked about 3 specific tools, a 1-page book plan, which is something you do before you start revising. So I think I'm actually going to do that before I get any farther in my revision, and then I can use that as I go through things afterward. The other one is a reverse outline, basically. Just outlining based on the draft as opposed to drafting based on the outline, which is something I tend to do. How she has it set up could be beneficial, though. I do typically do a reverse outline, but I'm going to see if I can implement some aspects of what she talked about into mine. And then the last tool was the hierarchy of editorial concerns, which is just basically the bottom of the pyramid is your story level issues, and it gets more detailed and in-depth the higher up you go. You want to start with big structural changes, like you do developmental editing before you do copy editing. That's just how that works. If you're doing copy editing before developmental editing, you're wasting everyone's time and probably money. She also had a really awesome handout. I think probably the 1-page book plan is probably the most helpful part of this, though, and that is something that I want to implement. I want to do that. There was definitely a lot of really good stuff. All of the stuff about marketing just made it more apparent to me how much I need to redo my newsletter. Ugh. The timing of this was really nice, though, because I've gotten a lot of tools and ideas that I can use while revising this draft, and I think it'll be really good. I've also filled up more than half of this notebook purely from this conference. This was partway through day 1, and I'm now here. That's the last page. This is halfway. That's halfway. That's where I am. So I'll probably watch the last few videos that I want to watch tonight after the kids are in bed, because that's when I'll have time. And I'm also going to be working on revisions and that kind of stuff. So tomorrow I have my Writers Guild meeting. We'll be talking about marketing then too. And I will definitely be making a 1-page book plan probably tomorrow, and I can use that to start my revisions properly. I'm only like a chapter and a half in right now, so that's not very far. It will not be difficult to make a book plan and like really dive into what I want to get out of this book, what I want it to be. And then as I'm reading, I can make sure that what I have written actually fits with that. In addition to the, let's see how very messy this book is, because it's messy. I'm very glad that my speculative fiction group through the Writers Guild sent out information about this event, because it has just been an awesome experience. There's so much good information in here. I've taken so many notes. Plenty of stuff I already know, plenty of stuff that doesn't apply to me but is still interesting, but so much of it has been very helpful, and I'm so grateful for that. Well, it is Friday, late afternoon, and I have to get ready for a movie night with my kids. 2 days since the end of the Writer's Summit, so I've had some time to really think about stuff. I took so many notes. I finished this notebook and did more than half of this one. It's kind of crazy. There were so many good classes that it's hard to talk about, like, the best ones. And I've already talked about a lot of them, but probably the ones that stood out to me most was the character archetype, which is something I really need to be thinking about as I work on this revision. Billy has always typically been a survivor character, which is someone who is generally a good person but stuck in bad situations, and they're just trying to make it through. They often have a chip on their shoulders. Billy certainly has a few, and they have a tendency to shut themselves off, and their character growth is through opening up to their community. For the most part, Billy has done that. What I'm working on is the 4th book in the series. Most of her character growth has already happened, so I'm in this weird place where she doesn't quite fit that character archetype anymore. If she is a different one, then it switches to protector, which a protector is basically someone who is looking to preserve something. This is like your stereotypical Superman type of character. Basically, if a character is trying to serve justice, they're probably a protector type. And how they grow is by becoming more relatable and more vulnerable because they're so, like, powerful and larger than life. And I think that's definitely how Billy's sister sees her. She sees her as, you know, oh, you don't have any problems anymore. You fixed yourself, so now you're trying to fix me too. And that's just not what's happening, or not what Billy is trying to do, even if it does come off that way. It feels like Billy is kind of between these character archetypes still. For the most part, if nothing bad were to happen, she would be more in protector mode. But the opening chapter of this book, something big is happening that she is discovering about herself and her body, and that does put her in survival mode. So although she has made all of this character growth in the previous books, now that she is in this position of this sudden thing is happening to me, I don't know what to do. I don't know what the best choice for me and the people around me is, but I have to make a choice. Now that she is in that position, she returns to this I'm just trying to make it through sort of position, and she returns to making some poor decisions, like not opening up to people, like her boyfriend, who definitely should be a part of what's happening and doesn't know about it for a while. So she is making these poor decisions again because she's suddenly in survival mode. So does that mean that she is still in the survivor archetype? I'm not really sure. I think I need to think about this more. I would not say that she is a full-on protector type though, because those are aspirational characters, and I don't think Billy ever gets to a position of being a truly aspirational character. Obviously, this isn't a one or the other, it's a scale. So, like, on this chart, at the very start, she was, like, way over here, and she's probably closer to down here now. I'm thinking about that. I do also want to think about these sort of archetypes in relation to the other characters. Xander, her boyfriend, is dealing with his own stuff with his parents, which also affects her because, you know, they're together in a relationship and his parents are controlling and terrible. So it affects their relationship, it affects his mood, and they are kind of like the driving force of the plot, or like the manifestation of the antagonist, even if the real antagonist is like Billy herself, because that's usually how it goes, especially in literary fiction. That's pretty typical. And then I also really need to dive into this sort of stuff with Imogene, her sister, because Imogene is not in the books as much as most of the other major characters. She is younger, she hasn't been in the same location, and in this book she's suddenly a much bigger role because she's there from early on until the very end. She's there the whole time. And she and Billy are struggling to connect, but she's still present. She is still physically there, and her opinion and the way she reacts to things, the things that she does, are important to Billy. So Billy is paying attention to them even if Imogen is not communicating with her. So I think figuring out where Billy is, what kind of role she has in this now that she's had so much character growth, like how she functions now, is a really big part of this. But figuring out Imogen and Imogen's character arc is the other main aspect, because I really do want to focus on their relationship as sisters. Like, the first book was all about Billy's relationship with her dad, the second book was all about her relationship with her mom, the third book was about, like, romantic relationships, so obviously that had a lot to do with Xander, but this one, I want it to be about her relationship with her sister, and I think what I have does not currently fit that. Most of these books kind of have three aspects to the story that all interconnect. So the major parts of this are Billy and Imogen and their disconnect and trying to get their relationship more even and open. And then there's Xander and his parents, as in Billy and Xander's relationship and how his parents are affecting it and their everyday lives. And then the third part is what happens in that first chapter, this sudden change, and Billy has to deal with that throughout. So it is how it affects her and her relationship with Xander. I don't know why I'm really avoiding talking about it, because it literally happens in the first chapter. You can kind of figure out what it is within a couple sentences, at least as I have it written now. I don't know why I'm trying to hide it. This isn't a spoiler because it literally happens in the first chapter. Like, you're finding out immediately that Billy is pregnant. So that's the third aspect, is this pregnancy and how it affects both the relationship and her future. This is her senior year of college, which is not an ideal time. There are worse times, but it's still not great. So they need to decide what to do about it. And, like, because Xander is having these issues with his parents, she doesn't want to inconvenience him, or, like, she doesn't know how to approach the subject when he's stressed and frustrated a lot of the time. So, like, all of these things are interconnected. I'm just really thinking about this because one of the other talks was about revising, and that was probably, like, the one that stood out to me the most, the one that is most helpful. It was Revision Made Easy. I know I talked about it a little bit afterward, but one of the things suggested is a one-page book plan where basically you go over all of the vital information to the story, because you can't fully assess anything if you don't know what to look for. All I'd really gotten done of my revisions was the very first chapter, so this was kind of the perfect time to do this, especially since my first chapter, at least for now, is pretty on point. It is probably the correct thing for the story as it is now. I know I'm going to have to change a lot of stuff. This book is such a mess because of how I had to finish this draft, but it's happening. And yeah, I took maybe half an hour to fill this out, so, like, why write this book? This is the conclusion to Billy's story. She's an important character to me, and I want to give her both a realistic and at least somewhat happy ending. She's been through so much, and she deserves a win. To be fair, she's gotten wins, but she's had a lot more losses than wins throughout this series. I have tortured her a bunch. Usually via herself. She tortures herself most of the time. So, like, what's the point of the book? I have a couple where it's like, if at first you don't succeed, try again. That's that emphasis on perseverance. But I also really want to put this emphasis on community and what it means to take care of other people and they in turn take care of you. So many people that she cares about have supported her throughout the previous books, and where she's at, it kind of feels like this is her time to support them. She's not necessarily doing that in a super healthy way, but she's working on it. So I went through and answered all of those questions. There's probably more I could add to this. I want to think about it a little bit more, and then I'm going to print it out so I can have it with me while I'm going through and doing the revisions. So those two talks were probably the ones that stood out to me most, because those are the ones most helpful and most relevant to what I'm working on right now. There were so many good talks though. This one about writing consistently and with joy was really interesting. A lot of emphasis on like the science behind these things, and like I really like the term that she used for writer's block. Instead of calling it writer's block, she called it creative anxiety, because it is like a legitimate biological, physical response to the stress that you are having, your inability to write. Basically, during this, you're in that fight or flight, freeze, fawn situation. Like a pretty normal response, I would argue most people's response, is to run away. Like that is the natural response. And so she talked about the reason why we have these like writing routines with our special rituals and drinking a specific tea and lighting a specific candle, listening to specific music, that sort of thing. It's because we are putting our brains in a comfortable position. So if you're struggling with writer's block or having difficulty of that nature, you can basically teach your brain that writing is not threatening by doing stuff right before you write, like meditation, deep breathing, going for a walk. My problem is I'm stressed all the time, constantly, and that's just the state of the world. So if I'm constantly in this fight or flight, etc. mindset, it makes it very difficult to soothe my brain, to get my body to relax and be able to write. And then there's also the neurodivergent issue with forming habits, or rather maintaining habits. The talk about narrative distance was really interesting too. Narrative distance is basically the emotional and psychological closeness between the reader and the main character or POV character, or the narrator, because those aren't necessarily the same. So she talked about like different levels of distance and different types of narrative distance. Like psychic distance is how close the narrator feels to the character's inner world, so like how much interiority we're getting. And then like spatial difference is the physical perspective, so think like a video game where either you're first person or you're right behind them or you're really far away. And then there's like temporal distance, which has to do with how close we are in time, like is it past or present tense, or like are we looking at it from outside of time. She kind of talked about the different levels of narrative distance and how you can change wording and phrasing to change how close or distant we are from the characters. If it's first person and you're saying I, then we're basically as close as we can get. So like using Billy, if I'm third person, past tense, Billy Dixon did this and that, we're very far away. And like adding qualifiers, like she doesn't have any titles or labels, but if she were a doctor saying Dr. Billy Dixon, or even worse, Dr. Dixon, which is her dad, that puts us even farther away. So if I were to say college senior Billy Dixon, that's about as far away as you can get. Full names are more distant, nicknames are closer. Using pronouns is really close. So if we want to talk about like diction, how formal the writing is, puts us farther away. If there are no contractions, you're farther away. If there are contractions, you're closer. Fragmented sentences and like colloquial phrases and terms, you are closer to the character or narrator. As far as voice goes, if the narrator has a different voice than the character, like in their dialogue, then you're farther away from the character. Most of this is stuff that I am at least tangentially aware of. I've been writing a long time. You pick up on things whether you have been taught it or not. But this was really nice to have it all like lined out. There was another one that was about how we keep writing and doing creative things when the world is chaos. And like, that's awesome that they had a panel on that, because that is so important right now. So one thing that she talked about was like finding our creative home and being able to go back to that. I don't know how I really felt about that talk, because it felt pretty like wishy-washy. Cat, I know you can jump. Come here. There you go. Hi, handsome. Oh, I love you. Okay, we're coming closer now, so I can keep doing this. Rude. I'm not really sure how I felt about that talk, because it was kind of wishy-washy, and there was also a lot of emphasis on like rituals and routines, and it's just, that is something that I find very difficult. Oh, another one I really liked was one that was called Human-Centered Marketing. You want to sum it up, basically it was, there's a lot of pressure to be super professional, but it gets us off track. People have to be interested for a reason. Basically, don't just think about the demographics, you have to humanize your audience when thinking about marketing stuff. Talking about that kind of stuff was just another reminder that I really need to get my button gear and get my updated newsletter set up so that I can actually do that. There was a question about things like BookFunnel and Goodreads giveaways and that sort of thing, basically where readers subscribe because of a giveaway, but those kind of people are the least invested people and usually have a very high unsubscribe rate. There's no level of trust that they have for you. They didn't sign up because they're interested in you or your books. They were interested in something free. And this has always been my issue with these sort of things. So it was nice to have someone who has the same sort of marketing values as I do and actually have someone talk about that and how it's more important how engaged the people on your list are than that you have a big list. He talked about like what are the important parts of your platform. Naturally, newsletters is number one, and like having a website and those sort of things. Social media is something you kind of have to do, but it's not very reliable. He mentioned podcasts being a great idea because it gives you a decent amount of time to make connections with the people watching. So I found that really interesting, and I agree. Videos in general really humanize you. Hey, YouTube. But he also talked about private connections. Like, if there's a big name and they put out something that really speaks to you, it's okay to just DM them or send them an email saying, hey, that thing you did was awesome, thank you for that. Whether they're a bigger name than you or the same, reaching out like that is how you build relationships with colleagues. It's about the one-to-one connections. Those private connections are an essential part of building your platform, even if most people don't see them. Most people don't know it happens. It's behind the scenes, but it is an important aspect. It was really cool having him talk about that. And then the final thing, what's the biggest mistake authors make in regards to marketing? Waiting too long. I'm like, yeah, like I didn't wait too long to set up my newsletter, but I've waited too long to fix the issue of I no longer have a newsletter. It's been almost 6 months since I started really diving into this kind of thing again, and I still don't have my newsletter set up, and that's a mistake. That's a problem. Oh, there was also a talk on fantasy world building, and that was really cool. I appreciated that it wasn't just a like huge long list of these are all the millions of things you need to figure out about your world. Obviously, there was a list talking about like the kind of things you need to know about people and customs and culture, economics, government, daily life, how the magic system works. But it wasn't like these are questions you need to answer. It was these are the sort of things you should probably be thinking about. Obviously, not everything is going to apply to every story or every world, but there's a certain amount of world building that needs to happen in every story, no matter what genre. Whether you're writing fantasy or not, this sort of stuff is really helpful, and it's something you do need to think about. Overall, there was just so much good information and so much that I can use as I work on my revision of this book. It needs all the help it can get, so this was just like really good timing. I was so pleased when Liz, one of the people from my speculative fiction writing group through the Writers Guild, shared this conference. It was absolutely worth it. It is how I spent most of last week. I did not have much free time, but it was worth it. It was really cool. And now it's time to really dive into my revisions. I really want to get this revision finished before October because I want to spend October doing horror. I'm going to try to have some themed videos. So I'm going to go over this one-page book plan that I wrote up earlier and see if I need to make any edits before printing it out. And then I'm going to do revisions. I've done like 20 videos now. How do outro? I don't know. Thanks for checking out the WorldShift Writers Summit with me. I've got information about it in the description, and I'll see you guys later.